Thanks to this year's rule changes, the dynamic kickoff is truly dynamic, but is it actually working? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for my hashtag everydayers. You guys make this show go, tuning in every single day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like NFL players, they sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Today on the show, I am here with Kevin Fielder, my bona fide small school and special teams guy. If you don't care about it, Kevin does. What's up, Kevin?
What's going on? I'm excited. I'm
so excited for this conversation. So here's what I want to do today. I want to do the kickoff. I've been waiting for the bye week to do this, because the kickoff they moved the touchback to the 35, and suddenly nobody wants a touchback for obvious reasons, right? Surely you can cover and get it better than the 35, which some teams can and some teams kind of can't. So I want to dive into every single angle of this with you, from what kickers should be doing, what returners should be doing, what the blocking setups are looking like, and then, of course, how the Vikings are doing at all of this stuff, which is a pretty mixed bag, and we'll get to that at the end. But really, from the national perspective and everywhere, I just want to cover the basics, because we're so used to a world where if you don't kick it into the end zone and you create a return, it's seen as a bad thing. But now you cannot kick it into the end zone unless it's something like the situation the Vikings were in week one, where Cairo Santos should have kicked it through for like time reasons. But otherwise, you want a return. So let's start with kick placement. Where are kickers trying to put the ball now, if not in the end zone?
Yeah, so there's kind of two ways to attack this, in my opinion. There's what we've seen a lot of with teams like the Panthers and the Rams with what they're calling the knuckleball kick. And
right. We'll get to the knuckleball, but I'm just talking about like where you want that thing to land. And sorry, by the way, Kevin, you are a special teams guy. I'm going to say it. You are an aspiring special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
You want to get into this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the person that I know that I trust with special team stuff. So sorry, Kevin, but just ball placement. Continue.
Ball placement, you want it, in my opinion, from what I've seen the most success at, you want it from the goal line right at the goal line to about the 5-yard line. That is where I've seen the most success for teams in terms of limiting returns, being able to get your kickoff coverage into the right spot, being able to attack certain blocks in this very specific way. There have been some success with kicking it towards like the 10 or the 5 to 10 range. If you're angling it super close to the sideline, of course, the risk with that is that it goes out of bounds and they get the ball at the 40-yard line, which effectively eliminates any reason to do that. But the goal that I've seen is that a lot of teams are trying to place the kick somewhere from the goal line to the 5, because that's where they get the best chance to set things up, get their speedsters on the edge to come in and make a tackle. And they found a lot of success with that. Now there are a lot of ways to get there, but that is sort of the typical ball placement kind of area.
And that kind of eliminates a bunch of the other ideas that we've seen teams kind of try and not have success with. So just in case there's anybody out there that isn't familiar with the new kickoff or doesn't get it, let's catch you up. So the ball has to be in bounds, and it has to be between the goal line and the 20. If you land it in the end zone, it's a touchback. It comes out to the 35. If you land it in front of the landing zone, it comes out to the 40 as if it went out of bounds. Am I correct there?
Correct, yes.
So whether you land it in the front or the back, one of the best things that you can do in the dynamic kickoff is land the ball in that landing zone that's highlighted on all the broadcasts, and then have it bounce through the end zone. Because if that happens, the ball comes out to the 20, like an old school kickoff. That's what you want. So what teams have sometimes tried to do is get that to happen. Kick it to the middle, have it bounce, hopefully bounce over the returner's head and into the end zone, to very mixed results. The Vikings tried one like this against Cleveland in London on the opening kickoff of the game. It landed 3 yards short, and the Browns got the ball on the 40 and would end up scoring on that drive. So this is it's a risk reward game a little bit. But what we've seen some teams have a lot of success with, like the Panthers and the Rams, is this so-called knuckleball kick. So why don't you explain the knuckleball kick to me?
Yeah, so the knuckleball kick, it's the most interesting thing happening in football, in my opinion, right now. This is what we're talking about when we talk about scheme revolution on offense and defense. This is kickoff scheme revolution. What the Panthers, what the Rams have really started to do is they've started to kick the ball at such an angle that it bounces in such a weird way that it doesn't bounce straight. It doesn't bounce back forward. It bounces sideways. And it has such a weird rotation on the ball that it makes it really difficult for kick returners to judge where to grab it. It's not something that you can let bounce, because if you let it bounce, the Falcons had one where they let it bounce. The kick returner had to shuffle to get it, and he was tackled at like the 10-yard line. That's not only a kickoff win, that's a like game-changing moment in a game.
Yeah.
To pin a team at the 10-yard line on a kickoff, that's game-changing. The Panthers have had the most success with it. I believe that they are still at the point where their average starting field position for opponents is at like the 23 and back. Like that's
insane.
That's about as insane as it gets for kickoff right now. And they've had a lot of success with it. The issue is that now that teams are starting to try it, their kickers just aren't as good at it. And so when they try it, it takes weird bounces. It goes out of bounds. It is not a kick that you can do if your kicker's not comfortable doing it. And so you'll see a lot of teams try it once, it doesn't work, and they'll never try it again. Because if your kicker can't do it, it's going to be a disaster every single time. And it's not something that you could keep trying to just rep until it works.
Yeah. So I'm trying to look up stats right now on like field position and how important it is, but I'll try to get numbers by the end of the show. But understand that the difference between the 35 and the 25 is colossal in terms of scoring percentage. Like if you can consistently get the ball at the 25 to start, your defense will look better. And one of the things that like has sort of tripped me up about this season is like a lot of teams, it feels like their offense or their defense is doing a certain way, but like the statistics don't match it. And I think some of that is because like it feels like the Vikings defense does a really bad job, but then you forget they started that drive on the 40, and like the EPA isn't all that bad because they were already so far to begin with. My next question is, what's the meta for returners? I see some teams have one returner, two returners. What are you coaching them to do? What do we want returners to like? What should we look for to separate a good returner from a bad one outside of just the result of the play?
So a lot of teams have started to shift towards two returners. And I think the reason for that is it eliminates any kind of directional kick where if your returner's lined up in the middle and you kick it so far directionally one way and it bounces, it's a disaster. And so having two kickoff returners effectively allows you to split that field in half and block it both sides. If they kick it to the left, your left returner gets it, and vice versa with the right. Once a kick returner catches the ball, it's the job of the other returner to move over and effectively serve as a lead blocker to block anyone who is much like a running back on offense. It's most dangerous man. You block the guy who is going to win first, and then you put your returner in a situation where he has to win a one-on-one. There will never be a kickoff where everyone is blocked, I don't think. There will always be an unblocked player. Yeah. It just depends on which guy you want to be unblocked. You have to sort of pick your battles there. In terms of returners, it's really the returner who could hit the hole the fastest, because there's going to be a crease. I think every kickoff that we watched, there was a crease, but if that
at least for a moment, but it's a matter of how long
that
it lasts.
Crease doesn't develop forever. And so I think the reason why like the Dolphins have had a lot of success on kick returns is that Malik Washington is so fast, so athletic, and he could find that hole and attack it immediately. That's been a big reason as to why also a lot of teams are using running backs there, because running backs, it is kind of like a running play. You just kind of have to, you block it very similar, you defend it very similar, and then it's up to the running back to find the hole and attack it. And so you've seen a lot of teams put running backs back there. The Steelers did it with Caleb Johnson. I don't remember why I didn't remember his name at first. And
And Kenneth Gainwell. We're both back
Kenneth Gainwell. Caleb Johnson is no longer on kick returns because he had a disastrous one that turned into, I believe, a touchdown for the Seattle Seahawks in that game, and he's never been on kickoff again. And so you're going to see a lot of teams choose either running backs or super speedy, athletic wide receivers. That seems to be the next pathway for this, is one of those two guys will return kicks for a team because they're able to hit that hole with such speed and aggression, and they don't need a huge running start like some other guys may need, because you don't always get a really good runway to get that speed and gain that speed.
So finding that crease is the name of the game. And we're going to talk about how teams do that next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Mizzen and Main. Deion Sanders once said, if you look good, you feel good. But the problem is that a lot of men's dress wear looks good, but doesn't necessarily feel good. It can be hot, stiff, and high maintenance. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear that actually feels good. Their shirts are stretchy, moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, and machine washable, super easy to deal with. And they actually invented a performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've been perfecting it ever since. So it's effortless to look sharp and also feel comfortable. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off of your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com with promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-I-A-N.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select areas. This episode is also brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. The Vikings are on a bye week, but for this week's moment that moved the game forward, I would like to extend a kudos to Baker Mayfield, who gets out of a tough third down situation with a gritty scramble and then launches an absolutely gorgeous post route to Tez Johnson, who had his own moving the game forward moment with a beautiful catch in the end zone to extend the lead against the San Francisco 49ers in a score that would ultimately prove decisive. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Okay, so I had to go later and find that graph that I was talking about, but here it is. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. If you're not, just know that it says that the offenses are starting further up than they ever have. They're starting with better field position than they have in the last 10 years, and they're scoring more than they have in the last 10 years. And the correlation between those two things is actually really, really strong. It has an R squared of 0.44, which in terms of football is about as strong a correlation between two things as you can get. Okay, back to Kevin. Let's move on to blocking strategy, because like the central issue here, you basically have 10 on 10, right? You've got a returner and then a kicker that's not really a threat. So those two guys cancel out and everybody else is either blocking or a potential tackler. So you have a series of one-on-ones and it's really hard to win those, because the vast majority of those guys are not typically blockers. You have receivers out there, you have defensive players. If you do have blockers, they're tight ends. So how do you go about attacking that or making up for that problem, depending on what side you're on?
So let's start with blocking schemes first, because I think that is the most interesting thing that's happening.
It is fascinating.
Very fascinating.
There's so much different stuff.
To me, I really think most teams fall into one of three different categories. You have kind of like a trap block where you have two guys block and then you kind of pull someone back to block whoever is free off the middle.
Right. You let a guy in free, and then you have somebody usually who's on that back line essentially just wash them away and hope the returner can do that. And by the way, so people understand, as you see, like next time you watch a game, watch that kickoff, watch how on the kickoff, you'll have at least 6 people up on the true line and then up to 3 people on 5 yards back on the back line lined up kind of as those like extra blockers that are going to pull or run around or do something fancy.
Yeah, I think we both tried to find a name for them. I still haven't found a name for them. I've called them like wings, anchors. There's like just whatever. They're just lined up.
Someone will come up with it. Some insane person who we call like Beans will come up with it.
We'll change the game forever there.
Yeah.
Then you have just typical double team blocks, which is just you're double teaming someone, and then typically you're leaving the furthest guy L1 or R1 if we're doing kickoff naming rules, which is just the furthest guys on either side unblocked. And in that case, the reason why teams do that is because it's really asking a lot for that furthest guy to come in and make a play if you're going to return down the middle of the field, which a lot are setting that up to return down the middle of the field. Then you have, because this is still effectively a giant run play, you have power. You have power, which is effectively pin pull, where you pin.
Everybody block down, everybody block the guy to your left, and then the guy all the way to the left comes over to the right.
It is a strategy that I have seen some teams use. I'll be honest, it's not my favorite. I know that there are reasons why teams do it. It's just not my favorite. I think you're asking your guys to do a lot in terms of space to make that play.
Now, there's way too much space. Like power in an O-line situation, everybody's lined up all next to each other. You don't have to run that much. But you're asking guys to run a lot and then accurately like break down a possible defender is really, really hard to do. And they're either too small to really break a guy down. Like if you're going to ask a receiver to do that, okay, but how good of a blocker are they going to be? Or if you're going to ask some teams, I mean, the Vikings have Elijah Williams out there sometimes. You're going to ask him to do it. He's not going to be that fast. Well, he's been like weirdly good at it, but
really has been.
But the other thing I think to take into account, I was thinking about this between when we watched all that film and now, Kevin, the kicking team has much more of a running start because when the ball is caught, they get to see it, and the receiving team, it's behind them. So it's harder for them to see. They either have to turn around, which slows them down, or they just have to go on the kicking team's motion. So the kicking team gets a full head of steam, which makes it really, really hard to like down block or to pull or to do something. They're just going fast. They're just accelerating before you get to accelerate. So it's really, really hard to do this. Plus the dynamic of like Eric Wilson, not that experienced of a blocker.
Yeah, a lot of teams are using, as you mentioned, it's really guys who fall into one of four buckets, we'll say. Backup tight ends, backup linebackers, backup edge rushers because they're big and they can do it to some degree, and corners/receivers because you do still want athletic players out there to either make a tackle or block downfield. A lot of different reasons why you'd use a corner or wide receiver there. The inherent issue is none of those guys know how to block because if they did block, they did it in high school when they were in 9th grade playing JV football and haven't done it since.
Or
it's
on
like,
punts.
Yeah, or
maybe
on punts.
they've got like punt protection responsibilities and maybe a little bit, but
there hasn't been a lot of teams who have. I haven't really even seen a team that have strayed away from that personnel thing, and I do wonder if that's just traditional roster building. You only have 53 guys on a roster. You only have, I believe, 48 active on a game day. Do you want to keep a guy active on game day just for kickoffs? Because it can be an explosive play, but you may only get one or two a game. If you only get one or two a game, I don't know if it's worth it to keep a guy active for that. So what I do wonder, and Luke, this is something we had talked about, is if teams are going to start using backup, the ninth offensive lineman on the roster, keep him active, then he can do some punt stuff, he could do some kickoff stuff, he could do a little bit of everything else. But then here, if you're trying to down block, if you're trying to double team block, that guy may be a little bit more effective in terms of blocking and has a little bit more experience doing it. I do think the other pathway forward is going to be converted offensive linemen, guys who used to be offensive linemen really early in their college careers who are now tight ends or
D linemen.
Yeah, D linemen, or in the case of like the Rams, a guy like Willie Lampkin, who I actually don't think is on the Rams anymore. But Willie Lampkin was
I think I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, but like Willie Lampkin,
because you're so tuned into special teams.
Yeah, Willie Lampkin is like a really small offensive guard who broke out during the Senior Bowl last year. He's super athletic, but he's probably not big enough to be a guard at the next level. So I wonder if like he could just become a kickoff ace because he's athletic, he could cover space and he can do that. It's such an interesting way to block it. I think, truthfully, the way you have to block it is you have to be head on regardless. Some teams are doing like a drop strategy where they're kind of dropping back and trying to meet contact a couple yards away from wherever.
Give yourself a little
up.
more space to.
But still, like we mentioned, right? If you're giving all these guys runways forward, it's a lot easier for a linebacker to deconstruct a block, especially when that block is against a tight end.
Or just juke it. Like we saw Ivan Pace do this a million times.
Yeah,
Ivan Pace was insane.
At just like to do that.
Yeah, at just like swim moving the guy or just getting past him because you've got 5 yards of a head. It's like blitzing. So these linebackers will be really good at it. One thing I will add is like, if we want to talk about roster math and like who's active, a lot of teams will have their entire O-line room active because of extra points and field goals, because you want as many linemen on there active. So you will have 9, maybe even 10 linemen active at a time. And so they may already be suited up, but we're talking about your Joe Hubers and your Walter Rouses potentially being there, but only if they're fast. They have to be fast. If it's a big, slow guy that's not starting because he's too slow, that guy's probably not going to be useful here. And you'd probably rather put in somebody who's maybe not as experienced of a blocker, but is a little bit faster, like a quicker lineman, like a D lineman with a 40 time kind of dude. That like for the Vikings could be someone faster, like Levi Drake Rodriguez, who's a little bit quicker as a lineman, or their Javon Hargrave or whatever.
Yeah, I think that because it's still, the name of the game is still speed, because you have to cover so much ground regardless. You need fast guys out there. And so you either find that offensive lineman who may not be good on offense and you effectively roster him just to try and maximize this, or you start to hope that guys start to learn how to block in this. I think the biggest issue for this is college has not adopted this kickoff scheme. So they're going from traditional kickoffs where they fair catch it 95% of the time. They don't really have to actually do much on kickoff, to now coming into the NFL. If you're a rookie, man, you're effectively learning an entirely different playbook here in terms of how to play kickoff, because none of it's the same. It's so different that you're going to see a lot of rookies struggle early on. And I think that's something that teams have to adjust for, in terms of like, man, you probably need to keep more experienced guys, more experienced special teamers, just because they can do this and have experience doing it.
And like one of the things we used to take for granted was like, oh, that 7th round pick, that's super raw. Well, he'll be on special teams at least a little bit for the first part of the year, and then he'll and then he'll work into the rotation, or he'll figure out scrimmage in the meantime. But he'll be a special teamer. We'll teach him specialty. Well, that might not be as lucrative or as fruitful, but what might be more fruitful is guys from the UFL who've been doing this for 3 years. Your Lucky Jacksons, maybe even your Jalen Redmonds, even though he's too important to be on special teams now because that dude's a baller. But those kinds of guys could be a little bit more useful on special teams and have that much better of a chance to make the team. Those guys that were in the UFL and XFL and USFL doing this dynamic kickoff for 2-3 years. But I want to narrow our focus a little bit. This is Locked On Vikings, and the Vikings have had a very interesting journey in the first 5 weeks. I've gotten the question a lot about like, why are the Vikings struggling on special teams or whatever? And I think we have a really detailed answer to basically any question you could have about their special teams. So I want to go over their journey of covering and returning the kickoffs next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Supply House. When it is time to get going on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your back. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. And they have a part finder and 3D schematic tool that can save you hours on jobs where every little detail matters. If you have a project coming up in your home and you need the parts for it, you need the expertise, you just need a good plan, Supply House can help you get organized. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off of your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets for anything you want on this season. You can use it across the entire site. Right now, for example, if you wanted to throw down, say, $5 on the Washington Commanders to beat the Chicago Bears, they're minus 270. Not a lot of juice on that, but you would get $300 if that bet in fact wins. You get $300 in bonus bets. So whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into all the stats and tape and spending a bunch of time on it, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much more exciting, especially here on the bye week when there isn't a Vikings game to think about or break down and you're looking for a stake in, say, Bills Falcons that you otherwise wouldn't really care about. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Moving right along with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Before we move into the Vikings kickoff adventures, as we were recording this, Kevin, Jordan Schultz reported, I guess, that the NFL did find that Will Reichard's kick hit the camera wire in London. I super thought it didn't. Both in the stadium, I just didn't see it, but I must have had the wrong angle. And then I zapruded it the best I could, and I couldn't find the TV was on the. I don't know. It was. I had totally talked myself into it not happening, but apparently it did. They won't adjust the stat or anything like that, but they acknowledge that it is a missed call. Fascinating. Anyways, people wanted that answer, but we're talking about kickoffs today. So the Vikings kickoff adventure, especially in kickoff returns, has been really, really bad. They have been awful at kickoff returns. What do we primarily want to blame? What do we want to go into first? Because there's a few reasons for it that we have.
I feel like the best place to start is probably schematically, because I think that is the root for a lot of their problems in terms of how they approach blocking kickoffs and for kickoff return, how they block, and why I don't think it's probably the best idea for how they play, because almost none of it makes sense to a strategy as to how they have out there. I think that they're still trying to find their footing, and it is clearly showing in how they play on the field.
Yeah. So part of it is there's the coaching point of the Vikings sort of being one of those teams that backs up into it rather than going forward headlong and meeting the contact. They are essentially accepting the contact in the entire 5-yard head start. And it's just really hard to win a rep that way. And you're seeing a lot of losses up front from guys we know as good blockers like Josh Oliver, guys we don't know as good blockers like Bo Richter, that are just not built to Jay Ward getting smoked on a lot of these guys that are not really built to handle that kind of contact. But then you also have the Vikings being one of these pin pull teams where they're doubling somebody and then basically asking somebody from that back line. Usually it's Josh Oliver. It was Nick Van Nett in one of the games, but asking one of those guys to pull all the way over and handle a player who's otherwise unblocked and just not being able to make that block. And then they're not even winning the double team every time anyways. So it's just their kickoff coverage guy or their kickoff return blockers can't block. It's that is at the crux of the issue. And there's always a problem for Miles Price to figure out. But we watched Miles Price, and boy, did we have an interesting time watching him kind of figure out this world in real time. You know what I'm talking? Do you want to explain what I'm talking about?
So there's been kind of this weird thing with Miles Price where he would try and attack the ball super head on, and he would have to really slow down initially. And when you slow down, it's really hard for any athlete in the world to start back up and reach a full speed. And so it really felt like he was missing yards because by the time that crease opened up, he had not hit full speed. And as a result, man, there was a cornerback, there was a wide receiver right in his face by the time he was able to make a play. So what we saw in the last probably 2 games is he's adjusted. He's now really starting back. He's a little bit more methodical with how he approaches the ball, and he's catching it on a running start. And so as a result, I think we saw a lot more effective kick returns from him in the last few games. And to me, an effective kick return is anything from the 30-yard line and beyond. If you get it to the 30-yard line, I think that's a successful kick. That is still puts your offense in a position to make a play. We saw a lot more of that against Cleveland. We saw a couple of those against Pittsburgh because he's now started to approach the ball differently. And I think that's sort of the growth that comes with having to learn this new kickoff system for a guy like him, because he's never used it before. He was not the guy who was doing it in preseason all the time. Now he is the guy who has to do it. And he has certainly changed his approach, and it's leading to more success there, despite maybe some of their blocking issues. And just for context, when we talk about a guy like Josh Oliver or Nick Fournette having to block and pull over, it's from middle of the field to the numbers.
To outside the numbers, yeah. This is not like split zone, like what you would see in a formation. It's a totally different thing, which is why guys that we usually fancy as good blockers are like not getting it done.
Yeah, it's like it's asking a lot for him. It's asking a lot for any guy back there, and that's why it looks like they may be getting blown up. I think they're getting blown up because they are asking those guys on that back line to have to make a play that is so unnatural to how they've traditionally blocked in their entire lives. And it's like, it's really difficult for anyone to do it. And I think that's why they're doing the drop kind of blocking method where they drop back, because that does allow Josh Oliver, Nick Fournette, whoever that is on the back line, to gain enough ground to be involved in the position. But that's also asking everyone on the front line to make ginormous plays against linebackers who are running head first at them. It's so difficult. I don't envy Matt Daniels or any special teams coordinator for having to effectively plan on how to approach this every week, because every team has their own strategies. Every team has their own way of doing it. And it is so difficult to pick how to approach it. One other note in terms of returns, you really have two ways to do it. Either you attack the outside or you attack the middle. And you're really
that's the thing I was going to prompt you on. Like, what is the well, let's just talk about the Bengals game, because it's a perfect example.
Yeah, so the Bengals, what they did on kick return is they angled everyone to the middle of the field. And it was like wherever the ball was kicked. If the ball was kicked all the way to one sideline or the other, the kick returner would angle back inside and try and hit one of those creases. What the Vikings realized was, oh man, they have numbers advantage on the outside every time. Just kick to the numbers advantage. And so they would just.
And because people were angled, like a guy is lined up 45 degrees toward the inside, he now has to turn all the way around to get out there and then make the block. And it's a hard thing to do when all Jeff Okudah has to do is run 5 yards to get past you.
Yeah, and so the Vikings had a lot of success in terms of kickoff coverage because they were just angling. I think they started on angling towards the right side, had a couple of successful kicks that way. Then the Bengals overcorrected, and Will Reichard and Matt Daniels was just like, okay, what if we just flip this the other way and kick it the other way?
Yeah, that was
like,
cool.
It was like just the biggest like chess match ever. And I think that's when you and I were both like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is a chess match on.
Yeah, this is just sick stuff. And this is happening all over the league. This is how like is probably worth watching in any game. Where like this is the coolest special teams tape has ever been. I think you get some of this on punts sometimes, and it's super underrated, but it feels like kickoffs, it's everywhere right now. Where so one they have Reichard kick to the right once, and they don't block Jeff Okudah because they're trying to kick to the middle, so they don't block the outside guy. Okudah gets by him though, because those guys aren't lined up right to get him, and he makes the play. And then the next time they're like, all right, we'll put more guys over to that side because they're kicking to the right today. Kick to the left. Ivan Pace makes the play. Then they try to do it symmetrical, and then they just kind of start picking matchups. They like the way that Pace looks against whoever was blocking him. And so they just kicked it Ivan Pace's way like 3 times in a row. And each one of those times they got good field position. And it just seemed like everything that the Bengals tried was super easily countered by the Vikings just saying, okay, we'll zag, you zigged, we'll zag. Like, it's super cool to see that. And then to see the way Pittsburgh handles things in the next game. After seeing all of that, they lined up in the same symmetrical formation at all times and said, come beat us. I would say mixed results, but that's better than what the Bengals saw.
Yeah, so what the Steelers did was they had 6 guys on the line of scrimmage, or where what we'll call the line of scrimmage.
The front line, back line,
Yeah.
I guess is the best.
And then they would have 3 guys on the back line, which we have not seen a lot of teams do 3 in the back line. I've seen a lot of teams do 2, a lot of teams do 1. Not a lot of teams just line up everyone on that front line. They did 3, and they were effectively telling Minnesota, hey, if you're going to angle this kick in either direction, we're just going to take the outside every time.
Yeah.
We're going to take the outside.
And we got all these guys in the back ready to pull over.
Yeah, it was so interesting. And they had a lot of success with it early on, because I don't know if Minnesota was prepared for a team to just be like, okay, well, what if we just blocked Jeffrey Okudah and attacked to the outside? And I think they had a return to like the 32-33 because Okudah couldn't get over. And then you have a numbers advantage there. And so it is really like, I think a lot of it is A, what your personnel is, and B, how you feel most comfortable blocking it. But a lot of it is going to be kind of how you want to play it. If you want to ask your kick returner to attack the middle of the field, you can do that. But you're also asking your kick returner, much like we were asking backline guys to go from middle of the field to sideline. What if we were asking a kick return to go from sideline to the middle of the field, angle it, and then also find the crease? And so,
you're asking them to go east-west when they really, really, really have to get upfield, because you can't have first contact at the 20.
So I think what you're going to see a lot of more teams do as we get to later in the year, and then heading into next year, when this is now year 3 at the dynamic kickoff, year 2 with current rule changes, you're going to see a lot of teams just basically attack the outside, because you will almost certainly be able to get some kind of numbers advantage there, or get your returner in a position where he has to make one guy miss in space before it's a big return. I think that's the most beneficial way forward for 95% of teams.
Kevin, thank you so much for all your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I love talking kickoffs.
And thank you so much for listening to the Locked On Vikings podcast. Get your questions and your hot takes in for Town Hall Tuesday. There's a Google form in the show description that will that you can submit those to, and I will be back tomorrow to answer them. I'll see y'all for that. And as always, Skol.